If you have trouble understanding my accent, turn on subtitles. Okay, just imagine being a 15-year-old girl in the age of knights. Well, you perverts shouldn't be used to fantasizing about such things. But what you have to get used to now is that 15 is the age when it's time to get married. Fortunately, it was even easier to do it in the old days. To get married in the Middle Ages, all you had to say out loud was something like "I take put a name here to be my wife, husband," and that's it. Even witnesses in a church weren't always required. But for some reason, despite this simplicity, not all men rushed to plunge in the world of cohabitation with women. Mainly because girls were discriminated against from all sides at that time. They were considered weak, stupid and more prone to sin than a cool man. The church in general put even more pressure on women, often forbidding them to study, ordering them to be obedient, submissive, modest, and all the nonsense that we as the progressive people condemn. But now it's not surprising that with such views on people with XX chromosomes in the Dark Ages, men were not exactly super duper eager to unite their lives with the shackles of marriage. Especially when there were books like 15 Joys of Marriage, written around 1400, in which the author described his plight as a man in this really horrible marriage trap he found himself in. The first and most important problem a man faces is of course money. Women are supposed to be such a stupid girly girls and do nothing but spend money on all sort of unnecessary things, until a man falls into a pit of debt. And the whims of these women are amazing, especially during pregnancy. Even then, the book describes a situation where you ask your wife what has happened and she says that everything is fine, even though you can see that nothing is fine but you don't know what to do about it. So what are such fickle and sinful creatures as women going to do in life? Of course they will make horns of their lovers. But who needs that? No one. So the words "don't get married brothers, live for yourself and have fun" are almost the main idea of this work. Whether this book was satirical or not is up to you to decide. I'd rather put a dislike under the video. But even though women were disrespected and oppressed, they still had rights and knew how to defend them. For example, there was an interesting court case called Meadowfield vs. Sancroft. Geoffrey Sancroft, an ordinary man of the time, somehow arranged a marriage with a certain Mary de Meadowfield. But one day, when the man decided to consummate the marriage, it is a scientific term. In simple words, consummate means to have the first sexual intercourse. This was done to formalize the marriage, but our Mary suddenly changed her mind about getting married. For us now, no from woman at any time is no. But Geoffrey did not understand this disobedience, was outraged and filed a lawsuit in the church court saying, "We agreed to get married and my wife turns her nose up at me and won't let me do anything nasty to her, do something about it." The court, as you can imagine, granted Geoffrey's claim. But Mary of course was not happy and said, "No, coward, I'm not your wife, I will not live with you, and if you don't leave me alone I will sue you this time." The situation was a stalemate, but our lover was not at a loss, and after talking to a local priest, he advised our hero to kidnap Mary and hold her somewhere by force. "God approves of this," he said, "because this woman is really naughty. There are demons in her and we must teach her a lesson." With his horse and two friends, Geoffrey rode out to the girl who was sitting in a grove near her house. Of course a fight broke out. Someone got hit, the horse was rearing, sticks were flying, people were swearing. But what can you as a young woman do to three men with a horse? Nothing. So after Geoffrey kidnapped Mary, he took her to his brother's house, where the newlyweds were locked in a room with one bed for 5 days. I think you understand what was supposed to happen there, I don't want to say it on YouTube. However, our man was only confident with his friends, because during those 5 days he certainly tried to get into Mary's pants a couple of times, but after the girl started screaming, he was scared like a cat of a cucumber and retreated. In the end, Geoffrey and his whole family gave up on this Mary, only problems with her. They made the heroine sign a piece of paper saying that she had no complaints against the hero and his family, and then let her go. But the woman was not stupid. She knew that a signature on such documents made under pressure has no legal significance. She went to the royal court and filed a lawsuit against her not husband. As you can imagine, Mary won the case and Geoffrey was forced forced to pay an unbearable amount of money as moral compensation for a peasant of the time. Although life was difficult, women in the Middle Ages were not completely powerless. If a man wanted to do something illegal to a girl, she could sue him. And sometimes it was the other way around, when women divorced their husbands for lack of intimacy. Yes, divorce was problematic at that time, because according to God's laws, marriage was for life. But it was not impossible, and one of the reasons for divorce was erectile dysfunction. If a man could not make love and procreate, and most importantly did not warn his beloved of his situation before marriage, then fuck you have nothing to do with that woman anymore. This happened, for example, in Paris in 1385, when a woman with such a long name sued her husband Jean for his inability to perform in bed. She presented several pieces of evidence to the court, namely the report of 3 medical doctors and surgeons who visited her husband and testified that he could not have sex. Of course, it is not clear how they assessed the quality of the man's erection, but I like to imagine that the doctors tried to seduce him by dressing in women's underwear. The second argument was our heroine's own oath that her husband was impotent. And the third proof was the oath of 6 men who swore on the gospel that they believed this woman and that they had never heard of her husband ever having intimate contact with anyone. As you can imagine, our heroine's evidence was irrefutable and as factual as possible. So the court annulled the marriage, and that was that. We already understand that there was intimacy in those days. But what if woman doesn't want to get parasites because of it, specifically children? Well, you won't believe it, but in the Middle Ages there was advice for those who didn't want to get pregnant. For example, it was recommended, sorry for the cruelty, to take a goat's uterus and wear it as close to your skin as possible. Or if you felt sorry for the goat, you can find a hard stone and carry it with you all the time, and sometimes taste it. Or if there was no stone, you had to catch a male weasel, cut off its testicle and set the animal free. The woman was supposed to carry these testicles on her chest in a bag made of goat or other leather, and there would never be a pregnancy. For those of you who are going to try it, please write back in 9 months how these methods worked. I'll be waiting. But let's back up a little bit, because before we get to the intimacy and the process of creating children, you have to attract these local beauties somehow. Yes, unfortunately there were no makeup tutorials on YouTube at that time. How do you like my nails, by the way? Do you want a separate video about them? But a treatise on women's cosmetic by a certain Trotula was quite popular in the Middle Ages. And the recommendations there were kinda dangerous by our standards. For example, the most difficult job for a man is shaving their ass. But in those distant dark ages, women had even more difficulty with hair removal. Trotula recommended the following method of depilation in her treatise. First of all, you should steam yourself in a bath. Yes, oh my god, people in the Middle Ages often bathed. And then apply a depilatory mixture to all the necessary parts of the body. There were a lot of ingredients and the mixtures varied depending on how much money a woman had. But the base was always quicklime and arsenic mixed over a fire. I mean, yeah, no wax strips for you girls. We apply hot heavy metal and poison to the body and wait until the hair literally falls out. But if you were a wealthy young lady, you could add to all of those ingredients a bunch of different oils to perfume your skin and a light ingredient like mercury. Well, beauty requires sacrifice. What did you want? You had to go to the bathhouse and lightly smear this expensive rich substance on your skin where you had excess hair. And after a while you had to pull on the hair a little bit and magically, and we know it was not because of magic but because of mercury, the hair had to fall off. But hair on the legs is normal. Everybody in the Middle Ages understood this and did not condemn anybody for it. But the hair on the head was a different matter. For example, if a woman wanted to stimulate hair growth or make it more saturated, it was recommended to take olive oil and boil the tail and head of a green lizard in it. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if a $3 hair mask from Walmart has the same composition. But to prevent the taint face from spoiling such authentic curls, women were advised to use tartar crystals. Yes, it was extracted from the Greek tartar itself. Regular application to the skin made it lighter, because pale skin was the high of fashion at that time, and was associated with aristocrats who did not spend their days in the sun in the fields. Also, really no one one cared that the common women still had to go to the fields and stand in the sun after bleaching. By the way, the girls also had lipsticks made of honey, bryony, squirting cucumber, I don't know what is it, and rose oil. There were also tips in the Trottle treatise on how to reduce the size of a vagina. But I won't tell you because my mother watches my videos. And my mom also asked you to watch a video about incredible prison escapes and subscribe to this channel.